All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're going to pull back those iconic judicial robes to find the soldier hidden underneath. We're talking, of course, about the one and only Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr.
So, here's the puzzle that got me thinking. What on earth could possibly connect the mud and blood of a Civil War battlefield to the quiet, dignified halls of the United States Supreme Court? Well, it turns out the answer isn't a thing. It's a person. A single, absolutely remarkable life.
So first, let's meet the man we think we know, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. He was a true giant of American law, and he earned himself a pretty telling nickname, the Great Dissenter.
And when I say giant, I mean it. For nearly 3 decades, think about that, from 1902 all the way to 1932, his voice wasn't just one of many. It was often the most influential and powerful voice on the nation's highest court. A real titan of the bench.
And, his legacy is all about what he fought for. He was an absolute champion of free speech. He was one of the first to argue that the Constitution wasn't some static, dusty old document, but a living thing that needed to evolve with the times. And his dissents, his powerful minority opinions, were so brilliant they often ended up shaping the law for generations to come.
But here it is. This is the key to our entire explainer today, the one idea you really need to hold on to. To truly get who this man of law was, you absolutely have to understand the soldier he was first. You just can't separate the two. So now we're leaving the courtroom, and we're heading straight into the crucible of the Civil War. This is the story of a young lieutenant and the 3 wounds that would come to define his entire life.
Look, this wasn't some brief, heroic tour of duty. This was a trial by fire. In October 1861, at a place called Ball's Bluff, he shot clean through the chest. They thought he was a goner. Less than a year later, at Antietam, still the single bloodiest day in American history, he's shot through the neck. And then, in May of '63, he gets struck by shrapnel in the heel. Each one of those was a very, very close brush with death.
Just let that sink in for a second. 3 times. 3 separate occasions where he stared death right in the face, and all before he'd even turned 23 years old. I mean, can you even imagine the psychological weight of that? It's just immense. And the personal toll was staggering. After he was shot in the neck at Antietam, his father, who was a very famous writer at the time, was so beside himself that he traveled all the way from Boston and literally frantically searched the bloody battlefields and makeshift hospitals of Maryland, just desperate to find out if his son was alive or dead.
So how does a person even begin to process that kind of trauma? Well, for Holmes, it became the bedrock of his entire worldview. This is the moment where the soldier's raw experience starts to forge the judge's law. You see, when the war finally ended, Holmes didn't try to bury those horrible experiences. Not at all. He did the exact opposite. He took all that terror, all that pain, the chaos of combat, and he used it as the raw material for his legal philosophy.
And all of this thinking culminated in his masterpiece, a book called The Common Law. Now, his core argument, the thing that changed everything, was this. Law isn't some abstract, perfect set of logical rules just handed down from on high. No way. He argued that it's a living, breathing, messy thing, shaped by the unpredictable reality of actual human experience. And you have to understand just how radical this idea was back then. The traditional view was that law was all about pure, unchanging logic. But Holmes, a man who had seen firsthand how little logic matters when you're in a firefight, he countered with one of the most famous lines in all of American legal history. The life of the law has not been logic. It has been experience.
So, how do we tie this all together? Well, what we start to see is a life that's not defined by 2 separate careers, but by a single powerful thread that runs through it all: courage. This is the true legacy of the soldier jurist.
So what did he really take away from that war? It boils down to 3 hard truths. 1, life is a constant struggle. 2, the idea of absolute certainty, well, that's just an illusion. And 3, because of that, the single greatest virtue a person can have is the courage to act, even when you are riddled with doubt. And this, right here, this is the absolute heart of his worldview. He believed the highest quality a human being can possess is the willingness to act decisively, to risk it all, even to die, for something you cannot empirically prove is right. It's all about having faith in your convictions, especially when you're staring into the great unknown. Which brings us right back to where we started. This was never a story of 2 different lives, a young soldier who then, decades later, became an old judge. No, it was always one continuous story. The man who sat on that Supreme Court bench was forged in the fires of the Civil War. That boy who was shot through the chest never ever left him.
And that leaves us with a pretty profound question. It's one that Holmes himself wrestled with his entire life, and it connects his incredible story directly to ours. After seeing everything he was willing to endure, you can't help but ask yourself, what is the cause that you would risk everything for?